Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mr. Epic. This is a quiet place where real stories are told slowly and respectfully. Many of you listen while resting, unwinding, or drifting gently into sleep. Before we begin, I want to remind you that tonight's story involves real people and real tragedy. These stories are not shared for shock or entertainment, but for remembrance, reflection, and awareness. For the best experience, lower your volume slightly, get comfortable, and allow the story to unfold naturally. If you're listening from somewhere in the world right now, feel free to leave a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. And if Mr. Epic helps you relax or sleep, consider liking the video and subscribing. It truly helps the channel grow. Alright, dim the lights, slow your breathing, and let's begin. On the afternoon of April 18th, 2018, a 20-year-old college student named Brandon Lawson made a frantic phone call from a dark highway in Texas. His voice was panicked, his words were fragmented, and what he described made little sense. Minutes later, the line went silent. Brandon Lawson was never seen again. What makes his disappearance especially disturbing is not just that he vanished, but that his final recorded phone call still exists. A chilling audio fragment that continues to confuse investigators, terrify listeners, and raise more questions than answers. Brandon was a father of 4. He worked hard to support his family and struggled quietly with personal challenges, including substance abuse and stress. Those close to him described him as loving, loyal, and determined to do better for his children. On the night of April 18th, Brandon left his home in San Angelo, Texas, after an argument with his girlfriend. He got into his truck and began driving south along U.S. Highway 277. Sometime after midnight, something went wrong. Brandon called his brother Kyle and told him his truck had run out of gas. He said he was pulled over on the side of the road and needed help. His voice sounded strained but coherent. Kyle agreed to come get him. While waiting, Brandon placed another call, this time to 911. The call that followed would become one of the most unsettling emergency recordings ever made public. Brandon spoke quickly, breathlessly. He told the dispatcher that he was being chased, that there were people in the woods, and that someone was following him. At times his sentences overlapped themselves, as if his thoughts were racing faster than he could control. He said he needed help immediately. Then the call ended. When Kyle arrived at the location Brandon had described, he found Brandon's truck parked safely on the roadside. The engine was off, the doors were open, the headlights were on. Brandon was nowhere to be seen. Kyle called out for him. There was no response. Law enforcement arrived soon after and searched the area with flashlights. They found footprints leading away from the road into darkness toward an oil field. And then, nothing. Brandon Lawson had disappeared into the night. Search teams were deployed over the following days. Helicopters scanned the terrain. Dogs were brought in to track his scent. Volunteers combed through brush, ravines, and fields. No body was found. No clothing was recovered. No phone was located. Just silence. Some investigators believed Brandon was experiencing paranoia caused by exhaustion or substance use. Others believed the panic in his voice was real, that something truly was chasing him. The audio recording of the 911 call fueled endless debate. Some listeners believe they hear additional voices in the background. Others insist Brandon was describing something happening, live men hiding, people approaching, danger closing in. Experts remain divided. What is certain is that Brandon believed he was in danger, and then he vanished. As days passed, the Texas landscape slowly reclaimed the scene. Wind moved through tall grass. Tires passed along the highway. Life continued, unaware of the unanswered questions buried just beyond the roadside. Brandon's family refused to give up. His brother returned to the area repeatedly, walking the land, listening for echoes of something missed. His children grew older without answers. His voice remained suspended in that final call, urgent, confused, afraid. Years passed. Investigators revisited the case. New technology analyzed the call. Different interpretations surfaced, but no definitive explanation emerged. Brandon Lawson remains missing. Tonight's story does not rush toward conclusions. It lingers in uncertainty, in the space between panic and disappearance, between sound and silence. As daylight arrived the morning after Brandon Lawson vanished, the stretch of land along U.S. Highway 277 looked ordinary. Cars passed. Wind moved through dry grass. Oil pumps rocked gently in the distance. To someone driving by, nothing about the scene suggested that a man had disappeared only hours earlier under circumstances that would trouble investigators for years to come. Law enforcement returned to the area with fresh eyes. They expanded the search radius, focusing on the oil fields Brandon's footprints had led toward. The terrain was uneven, scattered with mesquite trees, shallow ravines, and patches of thick brush. It was easy to lose direction out there, especially in darkness, especially in fear. Search dogs were brought in again. For a short time, they followed a trail that seemed promising. Then, just as in so many other disappearance cases, the scent faded. There was no clear point where Brandon stopped, no place where the earth told a final story. His phone was never recovered. That detail weighed heavily on investigators. In an age where phones are almost always found, even when people are not, its absence felt significant. Had it been lost? Destroyed? Taken? No answer ever came. As the days stretched on, attention returned again and again to the 911 call. The recording was analyzed by law enforcement, audio experts, and eventually the public. Each replay revealed something different, depending on who listened and what they expected to hear. Brandon's voice was clearly distressed. That much was undeniable, but the words he spoke were harder to pin down. Some listeners believed he said he was being chased by Mexicans, a claim that drew controversy and debate. Others insisted he was saying something entirely different, referencing guys or people, rather than a specific group. The poor connection, Brandon's rapid breathing, and overlapping dispatch audio made certainty impossible. At one point in the call, Brandon appeared to say, "I'm in the middle of a field." At another moment, something that sounded like, "There's one right here." The dispatchers struggled to keep up. Brandon's fear was real, regardless of what caused it. That much came through clearly. His tone carried urgency, confusion, and a sense that something bad was about to happen. And then the call ended. When Kyle listened to the recording later, he recognized the panic in his brother's voice. He did not believe Brandon was imagining danger. To him, Brandon sounded like a man who truly believed he was being followed. This difference in interpretation became one of the deepest divides in the case. One side believed Brandon's fear was chemically induced, the result of exhaustion, stress, or substance use. Brandon had struggled in the past, and some investigators felt this explained the disorganized nature of the call. In this view, Brandon may have run into the oil fields, becoming lost and disoriented, ultimately succumbing to the harsh environment. But the other side could not ignore the physical evidence. The footprints, the open truck, the fact that Brandon had calmly spoken to his brother moments before the panic escalated. To them, something external had triggered his fear, and yet no suspects were ever identified. No evidence of violence was found. No witnesses came forward to report seeing another person that night. The landscape once again refused to explain itself. Weeks passed, then months. Brandon's family organized independent searches. Volunteers walked miles under the hot Texas sun. Flyers were distributed. Media coverage spread the story beyond state lines. For a time, hope remained strong. People wanted to believe Brandon would be found alive, perhaps injured, perhaps disoriented, but alive. As time went on, that hope shifted. It became quieter, more fragile. Investigators revisited the oil field theory, noting that the area contained hidden hazards, uncovered wells, deep ditches, and uneven ground that could easily conceal a body. Still, repeated searches turned up nothing. The land held its silence. Years later, advances in audio technology allowed for more detailed analysis of the 911 call. Filters were applied. Background noise was isolated. Some claimed to hear additional voices. Others argued these were auditory illusions, created by static and expectation. The truth remained elusive. Brandon Lawson became one of those names spoken often in quiet discussions about disappearance. Not a headline that exploded with violence, but a slow-burning mystery that lingered. A man who sounded afraid, a moment captured in audio, and then nothing. His children grew older with a question mark where their father should have been. Birthdays passed. Milestones came and went. The absence did not fade, but it learned how to exist alongside daily life. For Kyle, the search never fully stopped. He returned to the area again and again, believing that answers might still be waiting in the dirt, in the brush, in some overlooked corner of the oil fields. He listened to the call countless times, hoping for clarity that never arrived. And still, no remains were found. No definitive explanation surfaced. As the years passed, Brandon Lawson's disappearance settled into a quiet, unresolved space that never truly closed. It did not fade into the background so much as it softened at the edges, becoming something his loved ones learned to carry rather than overcome. The questions remained sharp, even as time wore everything else down. Law enforcement revisited the case periodically, but without new evidence there was little progress to be made. Each review ended the same way it began, with a recording, a set of footprints that led nowhere, and a stretch of land that offered no explanation. The official status of Brandon's case remained unchanged, missing, unresolved. For those outside the case, the story often returned to the same focal point, the 911 call. It became one of the most widely analyzed recordings in missing person history. People listened in silence, rewound it, slowed it down, filtered it, and argued over what they heard. Some insisted the call revealed a terrifying encounter with unseen pursuers. Others maintained it documented a man overwhelmed by fear that had no external source. But recordings, like memories, are imperfect. They capture sound without context. They preserve moments without meaning. Whatever Brandon believed was happening that night, his fear was real to him. And fear, when it takes hold, can pull a person far beyond reason, far beyond help. The Texas landscape where Brandon vanished did not change much over time. Summers remained unforgiving. The wind still moved through tall grass. Oil pumps continued their steady, mechanical rhythm. It was a place where sounds could travel strangely, where shadows shifted easily, where distances felt deceptive in the dark. It was not hard to imagine how someone running, panicked and exhausted, could lose orientation there. And yet, the absence of evidence continued to challenge every explanation. No remains were found. No phone surfaced. No confirmed sightings emerged. Brandon's family lived with the weight of possibility rather than certainty. Each theory brought pain in a different way. The idea that he suffered an accident. The idea that someone harmed him. The idea that he was alone and afraid in his final moments. Each one felt unbearable in its own quiet way. But families of the missing often learn that certainty is not guaranteed. Closure, as people imagine it, does not always arrive. Instead, there is endurance. There is memory. There is the continued act of speaking a name out loud so it does not disappear along with the person. Brandon Lawson's story resonates because it captures a moment most people never expect to face. The instant when something feels wrong, when fear surfaces suddenly without warning and the world becomes unfamiliar, a highway you've driven before, a voice you recognize, a place that looks ordinary in daylight but becomes something else at night. He called for help. He spoke his fear aloud, and then the line went silent. As you listen now, it is okay to let the questions remain unanswered. Not every story resolves itself. Not every mystery yields a conclusion. Some are left behind as reminders of vulnerability, of perception, and of how quickly life can change between one moment and the next. Brandon Lawson remains missing, and in that absence his story continues to be told, not to sensationalize, not to frighten, but to remember. Thank you for listening to Mr. E-Peck. If you're still awake, feel free to leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. And if these stories help you relax or sleep, consider liking the video and subscribing. It truly helps the channel grow. Now, allow your breathing to slow. Let the sound of rain soften the silence. And when you're ready, drift gently into sleep. Good night.